Brendan Thomas is the executive director of Internet for Growth, and he joins us on the broadcast. Brendan, thank you for joining us today.
Triple H, enthusiastic and grateful to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being here today. Let's talk about what you're working on in terms of how small businesses are being helped by the work that you guys are doing.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. I actually think it fits in perfectly with your earlier segment. We can add a little positivity to the tech conversation in Tennessee and across the country. Internet for Growth is a nationwide coalition of small businesses that advocates for better media, marketing, and advertising policy, so technology policy, essentially, because without the internet or streaming or social media, a lot of small businesses and creators wouldn't be earning any income at all. There would be no opportunities to advertise, connect with customers, or earn income. And so I think this is a great opportunity to add a little bit of a different dimension to the conversations you've been having all day.
What do you guys do?
Right now I'm in Washington, D.C., so we actually advocate to Congress to improve things like data privacy laws, and Tennessee has one. They're all over the country, and they're conflicting, and they can raise costs. We don't like ad taxes, which are popping up. We want to make sure that online access stays affordable, not only for small businesses, but also their customers. And we have, like I said, members all across the country, from California to Pennsylvania to West Virginia, and we're entering Tennessee as we speak. We're accumulating members, and we'll be talking to your local congressional delegation about technology issues as they affect just ordinary, everyday people, but especially small businesses in Tennessee, which has a great economy, by the way, and more technology companies moving there every day. So we just want to keep this on the radar of people, so they don't make mistakes that affect our ability to get online and do business and communicate.
So one of the things you guys are advocating for is a national privacy law. Mm-hmm. Tell me what the issue is. What is happening with small businesses such that around privacy that is affecting them where we need a law?
Well, let's take a step back and talk about how the internet really works. It thrives on information. The internet thrives on the exchange of information, and a lot of big companies have developed to harness that information and help people to do business or communicate online. And in which case, governments across the country are hopping on board the train to regulate because a lot of these companies are big targets for revenue, but also people don't understand really how information does travel online or how small businesses or any company of any size really uses the information to improve that experience. And so I think politicians are stepping into the void because there is a lot of misunderstanding about data, and people want to know that their data is secure, and that's really translated into something called data privacy, which means that certain information could be off limits to private companies, let's say. And very often these privacy laws, they only affect big companies, but it's really impossible to separate out the small businesses or the little people who need the information too, or save money, or have a more convenient or speedy experience online because of the free flow of information. So we just want to make sure that politicians don't make a mistake and overregulate, essentially, when it comes to data privacy. But there's a whole raft of issues that we're concerned about.
Another thing that I was checking out was the way they're looking to tax digital advertising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tacoma, Washington, what's happening there? Because I know there's some concern that this might spread out nationwide.
Well, look, the economy's moving online, and there's a lot of money in the online economy that local governments would like to tax to shore up their budgets. But it doesn't necessarily work that way because, let's say I'm in Maryland right now. I'm right outside D.C., and Maryland has a budget hole. And they found a new tax they like, which is a digital advertising tax, and they also have introduced a data tax recently, and that's just a tax on information that goes across the internet. And so these taxes don't really work because Maryland still has a budget shortfall. And there's a lot of constitutional issues with taxing interstate commerce, so they're dealing with a lot of lawsuits. But Washington State now has one where a certain profession is taxed. That's digital advertising and marketing, or anybody who offers those services. Well, guess what? There's a lot of small businesses today that do that, and there's a lot of small businesses that pay for those services. And so an added tax on digital marketing or advertising is going to affect a lot of people. New York tried to pass one. Nebraska, Maryland, as I mentioned, Washington State. They're popping up all over the country because state governments are seeking new revenues, but it's really not going to work out the way I think these states or residents of, for instance, Tennessee might hope. The budget problems don't get solved, and all you have is higher taxes on services that are really lowering costs for customers and small businesses. And so we want to keep costs low. We want to keep these tools accessible. We want to keep them affordable, and we just want people to be able to enjoy their online experience because that's a lot of today's communication today.
Is the state of Tennessee considering a tax on digital advertising? And where is the state of Tennessee's legislature when it comes to data privacy?
So Tennessee has a data privacy law. There's a patchwork across the United States. And so one of the reasons, I think Tennessee's is probably better than some others, but what we would really prefer are common rules across the country so that small businesses don't have to navigate this complex patchwork of regulations. Tennessee does have a state privacy law. I think it's more friendly than, say, where I am, Maryland, because it does allow exemptions for small businesses. But the weird thing about a lot of these laws is that is that they actually exempt nonprofits, governments, but they target private enterprise. And it's just strange that if consumers need protection because of data security or data privacy, that these laws exempt many organizations from their effects. And so that's unfair. But people may not understand that they might lose certain services if businesses can't communicate with them because certain information's off limits. And that's really the inherent problem with a lot of these laws.
Like what kind of services could they lose?
Well, it's interesting. So I hate to get really technical here, but there are some concepts like sensitive data or data minimization. And so increasingly sensitive data includes just anything about anybody. And so if you're a man or a woman or you go to church or you go to a synagogue, well, it might be impossible to, let's say, market a church or market a synagogue or market certain products that you might enjoy to you just because of who you are. We think that that's not free speech. We think that people should be able to speak with one another and do business with one another. And there's also laws minimizing data, but the fact of the matter is there's any number of ways that a company can improve services with the information that they have about you. And so if there's data minimization laws, that might just mean that you're not going to get the service you expect. Maybe a company can't improve its website. Maybe a company can't advertise something that they think you might like. Maybe they can't do the things that you would expect them to do as a matter of course. And so we just want people to be aware that the information about you, you definitely deserve that it be secure, that you know what's happening to it. But we also want people to know that it's a good thing that we can exchange information about one another online and do better.
I think it's really interesting because these are things that most people don't think about. And as you said, advertising and marketing, especially with SEO and all that stuff, is really moving online. But I didn't know that there were places and spaces that would be like, okay, this guy right here, I don't want him to be able to advertise to this group of people. And we have client data. We have, this data on individuals, and now we're restricting how that can be used. That's interesting.
There might be restrictions. Let's say you at your radio station have a list of people who enjoy your program. There are laws that say that you couldn't use that information to tell them about specials that your radio station might be offering, or you might not be able to use what's called first-party data. That's just people who like your show and then offer them something that they might like. An upcoming appearance or a sponsor has an offer that they might like to know about. So it's not just about, say, acquiring data that might be traveling around the internet, but data that would just be natural to interacting with somebody online. And you have to remember that this is how most people communicate with one another today. There aren't those storefronts. There are a lot of online-only businesses. People may never meet one another. How do you communicate without having that information in the form of data?
But who is trying to restrict that? What is the benefit here? Who is saying, "Nah, I don't want this to happen"? Who's the boogeyman?
Well, it's interesting. It's bipartisan, and like I said, there are, when it comes to the tax issues, there are people who simply are trying to plug budget holes. When it comes to information, as I mentioned, a lot of these rules don't apply to the government, and they don't apply to nonprofits, which are also political campaigns. And so it's just interesting that these laws would affect private companies or small businesses, but not the people who pass the laws. And so what we actually have in Internet for Growth, a lot of companies that offer political marketing, public affairs, counsel, and they work on political campaigns. And so it is interesting that a lot of the politicians who pass these laws exempt themselves in their campaigns from the data privacy laws, because political campaigns are some of the biggest users of data. And we just think that we want fair laws. We want laws that keep costs low for consumers and businesses, and that we're all able to communicate on the open, ad-supported internet, because advertising is a real important part of this. It keeps a lot of content and services free. And so all the advertising that these small businesses do actually keeps the content free, entertainment, news, information free. And you mentioned creators, so a lot of people are earning their livelihoods through advertising. And so without that advertising and the really valuable personalized kind that depends on data, a lot of free services go away and costs rise.
It's really interesting to see the things that happen behind the scenes, because these are the kinds of laws and the kinds of moves that you just wouldn't, like, this would never come up, but it would be a law. It's very
obscure. It's obscure, but important. And, you asked a question, where is it coming from? A lot of your listeners were talking about children's issues online. And so there's bipartisan agreement that we might want to, return to a time when there are age restrictions on certain media or experiences or what have you, however you'd like to describe it. But that tends to obscure, the benefits of online content for kids or everybody else. And so, yeah, it's an obscure issue beneath the surface of a lot of fear and trepidation about technology or its effects. But ultimately, as we started out, if you're a small business, there were no advertising opportunities even a decade ago.
Brendan Thomas is Executive Director of Internet for Growth, a nationwide coalition of small businesses and creators concerned about threats to digital advertising. Thank you for joining us, Brendan. You mentioned age restrictions, and that caught my ear. And during the break, I was looking up Tennessee's I think this is the Tennessee Information Protection Act. Is that what you're referring to when you talk about Tennessee's digital privacy law?
That's the one, sure.
Okay, so I did not see age restrictions here, but you brought that up. Is your organization against age restriction or age verification?
No, not at all. And correct, you didn't see it in that law, but I think Tennessee passed some recent age restrictions, or you need parental consent to get on social media, and there might have been some other things. And, they're just part of increasing tech laws or regulations, but no, not at all. We don't concern ourselves with kids issues or age restrictions or anything like that, except to remind people that there are, and I think this was an interesting sort of transition from some of your earlier speakers, except to remind people that there is beneficial content and it is ad-supported, and it's especially important for young people, working families, middle-class people who just wouldn't be able to afford it if they couldn't, premium services that weren't ad-supported. So that's the only issue there.
I guess just for my clarity, because I'm a little slow. I'm not a too bright of a guy.
We can go slower. We can do slower.
Who is against you and why?
I don't think anybody's against us, and unfortunately, I don't think anybody is against us. I think because everybody supports small businesses, especially in this environment where prices are higher, and we all know about the problems during COVID and how hard it was to run a small business. We have restaurants in our coalition. We have retailers. We have health practitioners, fitness coaches, everybody. Nobody is against any of our members whatsoever. I think what there is a lot of misunderstanding.
Okay.
Because the issues are framed in terms of big tech, and not small business. And yet, small businesses rely on a lot of these social media platforms, streaming platforms, internet platforms for opportunities that wouldn't exist otherwise. Because the reality is that they've brought costs down. They've increased reach. You can reach a nationwide audience if you're a small business in Knoxville today, or if you're somebody with talent on, for instance, YouTube or any of the other platforms. You can reach big audiences. You can make ad revenue, and you can reach customers and earn income in a way that you could never do before. And I don't think anybody's against that. I just think there's a lot of misunderstanding about the effects of things like data privacy, which is kind of makes your eyes glaze over. But it's really important because it's about how information travels between people today. Again, we may never see one another. You're definitely not going to see somebody, you're in Tennessee and somebody else is in Florida, but you have some great sneakers. You might never see that person, but you want to do business and communicate with that person. We just want to make sure that happens.
Yeah, so I get what you're saying. As people are considering privacy laws, taxation, big business is considered, small business is not. Creators are not, and they could get swept up in decisions that could have an adverse effect on them because they're not being considered and they're not at the table.
That's true. And no matter what you think of the Googles or Facebooks or Metas of the world, they have opened up doors for a lot of people. There are a lot of alternatives, even if you don't prefer those companies. But the laws and regulations, because they become political footballs, they're not going to affect the big boys. They're going to affect the little guys, because the big boys have plenty of lawyers and resources to fend off these regulations, but the little guys and girls don't. And so we just want to make sure that people who don't understand that the economy happens online right now and that the opportunities are many, and we want to make sure that they're ever expanding. And that means data-driven, personalized advertising, media marketing, and it benefits consumers too.
All right. Brendan, thanks for being on the broadcast today.
Really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for having me on.